Opportunity means each one of you have an opportunity during the situations for disease control to make decisions. Missed opportunity is where you had a chance to make a decision and you didn't take that chance. You being in the rhetorical sense. The last one is mistakes. And to tread on that carefully, as Mark mentioned, but mistakes are once you looked at the decision you made or you did not make and you wish you'd done something different. I've got there, I do have Twitter, it's just my name. I promise if you follow me on Twitter, I don't care if you do or not, but if you do, I promise you 3 things. There'll be no graveyards, no politics, and no Philippines on there, okay? So you won't have to put up with any of that stuff, right? Maybe an occasional arrowhead, but other than that. I've shown this slide several times before at different grower meetings. I'll start off with this. These are how to create a disease problem. And if you look at this, this follows what each of the previous speakers have talked about. But almost invariably, if you call me to a field or a county agent, by the way, the county agent would like to be here today. They are all, every one of them are at winter school. They send their apologies, but they wish they could be here with you. But if you go through your county agent and you have me come to your farm and you say there's a disease problem, almost invariably can we track it back to one of these decisions. Okay? Short rotations, of a susceptible variety that didn't have the fungicide program susceptible variety needed. Farmer saved seed. There is nothing wrong with saving seed. Unless it's not saved correctly, it's not treated correctly. Use of fungicides, maybe you have a short rotation, you needed a stronger fungicide program. But it was cheaper to use this than that. Okay? Sometimes that doesn't work out for you. It may have cost you less, but the profit was less. Mark just talked about timing. He said I'd talk about timing. Of course, I'm going to getting a late start on a fungicide program or finishing up too quickly or spreading intervals out. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You can't get in the field. But more often than not, when we look at a disease problem, we can track it back sometimes to where the timing the application problem and getting behind on a fungicide application. And that might not be your fault, and oftentimes it's not. You might not be able to get in the field. But when we look at the problems that happen, a lot of times it's that. I'm going to break this into what your opportunities are. An opportunity, again, Coy, is you have a chance to make a decision. You have a chance to make a decision. You either make the decision or you don't, or you make the right decision or the wrong decision, but you got one. We break into the different parts of the season that you see there. From planting all the way to harvest, you have decisions you can make that are going to impact disease and nematode management. And then the last one is one that most growers don't think about. Next year, the year after, and into the future, because you've got to make a crop, you've got to have a profit this year and let next year take care of itself. Well, sometimes by letting next year take care of itself, it doesn't always happen that way. It comes back to get you. I'm going to talk about the grower meetings as your missed opportunity. Okay, you've got an opportunity to do one thing correctly. A lot of times, the variety you plant, your planting date. Whether you use an in-furrow fungicide or an nematicide or not, you've got one chance to do that. And in peanut, you usually don't get a second chance, and you don't want a second chance. So my message is, for all of this talk and all of these is, you got decisions to make. Don't let the opportunity pass by without making an informed decision. Okay? At planting time, what are the decisions you can make? What are the opportunities you have at planting time to make the right decision that can lead to the profits at the end, or a decision that you wish you could go back and make again? What's your planting date? Planting date we know affects dimension spotted wolf virus. Planting date affects the level of white mold you may have. And you may not have complete control of your planting date, but it can impact it. The variety you select. The variety you select has a huge impact as well, potentially. We know that Georgia 06G is going to be the largest planted acreage this year. But you have to know that variety. If you plant Georgia 06G and you have a nematode problem, you know you need to make decisions to counter that. If you plant Georgia 06G and you've got a white mold problem, you know that you have the opportunity to use a different fungicide than if you had planted Georgia 12Y. Okay? Seed treatments, we've got 2 out there now. We've got Rancona and we've got Dynasty, and we'll talk about that. In-furrow fungicides. Again, how many chances do you get to put out an in-furrow fungicide? Once. Okay? Now the question is this: opportunity and missed opportunity. If you take every opportunity and you do everything you could possibly do to protect yourself, you may over-insure yourself, correct? You may spend more money than you need to. So as Mark said, non-biased research-based information, we in Extension pride ourselves on that. The decision to do or not to do is based upon what your risk is. And doing something you don't need to do simply because you can may not make you more profitable. I plant insecticides. In this case, there's only one plant insecticide, and that's Thimet, that will help you with your tomato spotted wilt risk. Okay? Maybe you don't need the Thimet. Maybe you've got already low risk, but you get one chance, and then you're used to nematicides. One chance. Okay? Root knot nematodes, peanut root knot nematodes on the left, Aspergillus crown rot. If you're going to manage those successfully in 2020, you have one chance to make those decisions. Okay? And the decision you make, whether to do something or not to do something, should be based upon what the risk is. Because once you close that furrow, your opportunity is gone. Just a picture from a few years ago. In this case, this is here in Tifton. It's small plot data, small plot trials, obviously. Okay? But you can see in there, you can pick out clearly where the root knot nematode varieties are planted. Okay? You may say that I'm not going to plant those varieties. You may say I don't have root knot nematodes. Okay? But the variety selection, that decision you make, allows you to move forward. Or if you choose not to plant the resistant varieties, or if you plant a susceptible variety, you have to make the right decisions. Because if you don't make the right decisions, that's where your profit suffers. For 2020, the following nematicides are out there. And again, how do you know if you need nematicide or not? A lot of times we encourage you, not a lot of times we always encourage you to soil sample in the previous season. But from AgLogic all the way to Tello, now that Corteva has DuPont, or Vidate rather, Vidate will be something that you'll probably hear more about. Most important thing is, if you're going into a field, root knot nematodes on peanuts, peanut root knot nematode, and there's a potential for a problem, if you don't plant the root knot nematode variety, then look and see what's the opportunity using a nematicide. And if you don't use a nematicide, or if you needed Telone and you don't use Telone, then you have to accept that there's going to be consequences. And those consequences are going to be a reduction in yield, a reduction in profit, because you didn't do what you could have done. Okay? Is it a mistake? It depends on how you look at it. You made a decision. You made a decision based upon what's opportunity, and then you went with it. Seedling disease. You can see this picture, some aerial photographs from Tim Brenneman's trials last year. Getting a good stand is critically important. Critically important. We would never plant seed that did not have a seed treatment on it. We would never do that. If you do that, that's a huge mistake. That's a mistake we cannot recover from. So we don't do that. Okay? The question comes more to me is, if you're saving seed for the economic reasons on doing that, you grow good seed, peanuts, you want to save your seed. If you do that, recognize that more often than not, when we have a stand problem, especially with Aspergillus crown rot, it's from farmer-saved seed. That may have something to do with the storage, it may have something to do with the treatment. But if you save your own seed, or if you are buying seed from somebody who saved their seed, or getting your seed, however you get it, just recognize you have to be especially careful with your decision for treatment with a seed treatment and possibly with an in-furrow fungicide. Okay? The opportunity's there. The mistake is where you don't recognize the opportunity, or you disregard the opportunity, you don't make the decision. 2020. We got 2 seed treatments. More often than not, you're not going to have a choice in the matter. The good news for you is this. Depending on no matter where you get your seed from, if your seed is treated with either Dynasty PD or with Rancona, you have a stout seed treatment on there. Okay? I won't say there's one trial versus another trial, but one seed treatment looked better versus the other, but the good news is, make sure you're using a seed treatment. And make sure that your seed treater, whoever it is, whether you're buying commercial seed or you're saving seed, make sure that it's treated well. Okay? That is the first line of defense against Aspergillus crown rot, first line of defense against Rhizoctonia, and a first line of defense against tomato spotted wilt virus, because a skippy stand translates into more spotted wilt. Should you use an in-furrow fungicide? Should you use an in-furrow product? Okay? The cheapest, the most commonly used would be azoxystrobin, Abound in furrow, something like that. And that complements, does not replace a seed treatment. Complements a seed treatment, does not replace it. If for some reason you've had trouble getting a stand in the past, if for some reason after the talk you're concerned, is my seed going to be good enough, even with the seed treatment, then Abound in furrow, azoxystrobin in furrow gives you that opportunity. Proline in furrow. If you have any considerations about CBR, starting to come back slowly, cylindrocladium black rot, if that is at all a question, you have one good chance to fight that, and that is to put something like Proline out in furrow. And then Velum Total, and that plant nematicide, but it also has some fungicidal activity too. And if you choose to use the Velum Total in furrow, it will complement the seed treatment as far as seedling disease goes, and will also give you some early season benefits from respring. Okay, so you have the opportunity. Every peanut grower in this room has the opportunity to use an in-furrow product to assist at least in seedling disease control and possibly more. It's up to you to make the decision on do you need that or not. Because not everybody needs these, but you have to make an informed decision. Cylindrocladium blackrot, if you've never heard of it, that's a good thing, but you should be aware of it because it is starting to come back. It's a disease that can be seed transmitted, but certainly survives the debris in the field. It is almost impossible to control during the season if it shows up. Once it shows up, our only good treatment is to use Proline and furrow. You can see this is from over in Bullock County a few years ago, and you can see in the middle, you can see where we did not use the Proline and furrow, you can see where we did. Okay? Picture's worth a million words in this case. If it's a problem, if it's a potential problem, just know you have one chance. Most growers in here say move on, we don't have that problem. Just be aware you've got that situation. Looking at in-furrow fungicides, and this is again some data from Tim Brenneman last year. On the far right is where he planted untreated seed, which you would never do, with that tall red bar. This is our yield potential in those fields. And that tall red bar on the far left is where he treated the in-furrow, no seed treatment, put vellum total out. What that shows is an in-furrow fungicide or in-furrow product such as vellum total can give us some strong response. If you look at the Rancona or the Dynasty, the most important thing to see is that the yellow in those treatments would be the seed treatments. And you'll see that the yield with the Rancona and the Dynasty, the seed treatment alone in yellow, was about equal. What you'll see in a tough situation, which Tim had, is when you complement the Rancona or the Dynasty with additional fungicides, or there's vellum, which is also nematicide, with the Proline, with the Abound, you can get increased yield as well. Opportunities. What's the mistake? This is supposed to be all mistakes, Bob. The mistake is to not plan accordingly. The mistake is to have opportunity and not make some decision about it. What does Skippy stands lead to? We've already said that, tomato spotted wilt virus. One of the important reasons for getting good stands, using whatever products it takes, is to avoid tomato spotted wilt virus, because the tomato spotted wilt virus, as my friend in Screven County found out, he already knew, he'll tell me he already knew, is that spotted wilt can be a major issue. Mark talked about this. On the far right, we're looking in black, is from 2015, 16, 17, 18, we hovered around 3%. Spotted wilt statewide, region-wise, last year we were up to about 7%. It's an estimate. It's an estimate. Not every grower in this room had a problem with it, okay? But overall, it was more severe last year than any year since about 2005. Why was that? We don't know exactly, but what I can tell you is we cannot forget about spotted wilt. And every management decision that goes into managing against tomato spotted wilt virus is made at the time you close the furrow. Is made at the time you close the furrow. You cannot go back and protect the crop after that. And I'm not saying that every grower in this room should use Thimet. Okay, but what I am saying is that's a decision you need to look at. And this is the spotted wilt intensity in 2019. If you look at that, the only product that manages thrips, they all manage thrips, but the only one that manages thrips that also reduces, not because of how many thrips you kill, but because of what it does to the plant, is use of Thimet. Okay? Thimet is an opportunity on top of everything else that goes into Peanut RX to make your decision or to make your reduce your spotted wilt. Okay? It's not convenient necessarily. It's a granular product, but it's something to consider. Why? Because it stands out in that situation. And this trial Albert had was looking at different varieties. Gray is where he did not use Thimet. Blue is where he did. You can see there was a yield increase. Was it all associated with the tomato spotted wilt virus? Not necessarily. But it's a strong indication. It's something we can consider. It's an opportunity. It's a potential missed opportunity. It's a potential mistake. If you didn't need it, you spent on it, maybe you made a mistake. But if you needed it, you can't go back and fix it. Right? Peanut RX 2020 version is out. We're working on an updated phone app for it. There'll be cards available on the quick reference guide that Mark talked about and Scott talked about. The Peanut RX will be on there as well to talk about the impact of all these factors. Early season. Let's move from planting. What's the opportunity? When you initiate a fungicide program, can you do banded applications of Proline? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but there's probably, Scott told me there's 210 people in here. I think facial recognition on his phone, 210 people. Okay? Quick count. Quick count. I'm even smarter. I knew that. Okay? If I was to ask how many people in this room banned Proline early season, I would say maybe one or two of you would raise your hand. It's not convenient. but it's an opportunity, right? What about early season leaf spot control? If you're using Velototal in furrow, if you are using Thimet in furrow, you get some kick towards leaf spot control. If you go with something like a Preaxor, you start the program a little bit later for leaf spot. There's opportunity. And when would your white mold? Okay? And what would you put out if you got a nematode problem? When would you put out something like Propulse or AgLogic to benefit that? These are all management decisions you have. These are opportunities early in the season. What are you going to do? Why would we spray young plants? Okay? And again, if I ask a show of hands, how many of you are willing to ban Proline? One of you may raise your hand, two at most. Okay? Because it's not convenient. But it's an opportunity. Is it a mistake not to do it? No, but if you don't do it and you have a white mold problem, it was a missed opportunity. And this is from 2010. It still stands. You can see on the left-hand side is a program where we had no early season application, 3 weeks after planting with the Proline. On the right-hand side is where we get. The growers in here need to change your mind. No, but there's opportunity. There's opportunity, there's missed opportunity, and sometimes you wish maybe I'd figured out how to do that. Ban the entire rate into that 6-inch man. Okay. Time to Propulse. If we got a nematode problem, the opportunity to manage nematodes is primarily before you close the furrow. But if we want to protect the pegs and pods, we can come back with either an application of AgLogic or an application of Propulse. What's the timing of that application? It's a pegging time application. The opportunity for these products, the AgLogic and the Propulse, starts approximately 40 to 45 days after planting. If you're going to use AgLogic, I'd look at that 40-45 day application. If you're looking at Propulse, I would probably go at 60 days. Why? The data shows you still get good management of your nematodes on the pegs and pods, and if you go at 60 days, that Propulse can replace what you would have sprayed for white mold, leaf spot activity, white mold activity, and also nematode control. You have an opportunity. If you have a problem with root knot nematodes, and if you don't come back with something early in the season, somewhere between 40 and 60 days after planting, that's a missed opportunity. Is it a mistake? It's a mistake only if that decision cost you yield that you could have made up, cost you profit. Mid-season. Mark told you I'd talk about the timing of application. That's absolutely correct. The biggest opportunity each one of you as peanut farmers have in this room is the timing of your application. Sometimes it's beyond your control. If you can't get in the field, it's too wet, it's raining too much. But staying on time is absolutely critical. No matter what else you do, no matter which fungicide you choose, it makes a huge difference. Now there are differences. We do trials every year. We do trials with your county agents. We do on-farm trials. We do small plot trials. Not every fungicide is created equal as far as leaf spot or white mold goes. And you know that. I don't have to tell you that. You know that there's differences. But your decision on whether or not to use one fungicide or program or not should not stop simply by looking at the cost. You should also look at the efficacy. Ask us for data. Seek data from your county agent. Seek data from the consultants. But you have got to make these decisions. Your timing of application, how efficacious is it? Of course, cost plays an important role, and irrigation or timing of irrigation or rainfall. I'll show you some data here in a minute where a program that was bulletproof in 2018 was not bulletproof in 2019. And the only major difference between the field we had it in 2018 and 2019 was, did it rain or not? And when it doesn't rain, it's going to be very, very hard to get control. So irrigation within 24 hours, rainfall within 24 hours after an application is critical. A whole host of fungicides out there. Okay? Most important thing is, I tell every grower, tell every county agent, the most important thing of a fungicide program is to use one. Most important program is to use a program. Okay? The next thing is, what's going to be the program which is most effective and most cost effective for the problems you have. If you have 10 years of rotation with Bahia grass, you're going to benefit from a different program than someone's every year behind peanuts. Carefully making that decision makes a difference. Newer fungicides for 2020, just to call your attention to them, it would be a mistake. It would be a mistake to think, as Mark said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And so as we have newer fungicides coming out, it behooves you to pay attention to them. And these are ones that are out there either last year or coming this year or have been out there for a year, maybe two, but just be aware. There's nothing wrong with the fungicides we've had in the past, but these may bring new opportunity to you. Be prepared. Just like again this trial from Cook County last year. This is the amount of white mold we had. I'm not going to read you can't read them, that's even better on the bottom of programs they are. That's the amount of white mold. From yellow on the right to yellow gold on the left. That's the amount of white mold. And what that says to you is different fungicide programs are better under the situations we had in that field for white mold. The most important thing is to use a fungicide program. The second most important thing is to look and study to see which one might benefit you, because what that translates into, this is a mirror image. What was higher in white mold is now lower in yield. So it makes sense to understand there's differences. You have the opportunity to select a fungicide program. Do not be afraid to step outside what you've always done. If you always do what you've always done, you always get it the same thing. Another thing that's critical. These fungicides, especially for white mold, they work better when you get them off the plant. Okay? They work better when they get them off the plant. We're looking for irrigation within 24 hours if possible, either from rainfall or from irrigation. How much rainfall or irrigation do you need? You probably need a couple tenths at least. Something, it doesn't have to wet the ground, it just has to move that material down the canopy of the plant. If we do not get rainfall or irrigation, if we do not get it, whether we're putting Propulse out or something else, we won't get the same efficacy. On Propulse for nematode control, you can wait up to 3 or 4 days, but you have to have some kind of irrigation. If you don't, was it a mistake to use the product? All I'll say is if you don't get some irrigation on a fungicide for white mold or a Propulse for nematodes, you will not get the same benefit that you would have. In this trial in Bullock County, if you look at the far right, the yellow, that's 48 hits. That's 25% of our top treatment in 2018. It had 5% or 5 hits in 200 feet. In 2019, where we had no irrigation and no rainfall, the product, which was so good, was still good, but it wasn't. It just goes to show you look across, this is the number of hits of white mold in 200 feet of row. The previous year we had rainfall, we had some good moisture on those crops, we were down around 5, down around 10, down around 15. And a year with no rainfall or very little, the amount of white mold we had was tremendous because we could not move the product where it needed to go. And when you look at yields, and that year the top yield was 3287, that's just about half of what the yields were the previous year. Some of that's moisture, but a lot of that was white mold. Timing matters. Within 24 hours, you ought to be able to have some sort of moisture there if you can to get the product out. Last thing, and I'll stop. Okay? The future is now. First thing is crop rotation. We know that. You know that. But the thing we need to recognize on that is we would like to see you put peanuts in the field no more than once every 3 years. 2 years out of peanuts, actually better 3 years if you can. If you don't put peanuts, or if you have short rotations, and what this shows is stem rot, which is white mold in red, limb rot, which is rhizoctonia in yellow, and leaf spot, which is green. And if you look at the years in peanut, 1 year in peanut, 2 years in peanuts, 3 years in peanut, we continue to see an increase in the disease. And what happens with the yield? It continues to fall off. If you make the decision because you feel you have to economically, there is absolutely no doubt that your disease pressure is going to increase. If disease pressure increases, you owe it to yourself to make decisions at the beginning of the season, what variety you're going to plant and what fungicide program. And the last thing I'm talking about is fungicide resistance management, which is the last thing on most growers' mind. Okay? If you look at this slide, we got non-treated, we got tebuconazole, the old Folicure, we got Headline, we got Abound. This is season-long use. This is the light blue bar is season-long use, and what you'll see is that the tebuconazole, the Headline, which used to be invincible, and the Abound, which used to be a very strong leaf spot fungicide, use season-long, we have lost their efficacy, much of it, as far as leaf spot control goes. And we have that because of overuse. Okay? We have to understand that as we move forward, we have to keep resistance management in mind in all our products. Things like adding Bravo to those products, adding sulfur to them are ways around it, but the bottom line is let's not overuse our products and let's make sure we use resistance management. I want to thank Tim and Albert. They've been a big help as far as lots of research goes into it, and I'm going to stop there and only went a little bit over. Thanks for being here today.